At 11:45 p.m., on a Tuesday, the only light in my penthouse home office came from the dual monitors on my desk. I was 3 hours deep into a merger agreement, my eyes burning my coffee cold. The city of Chicago slept below me, a grid of silence and shadows, but my phone buzzed against the mahogany desktop, shattering the quiet. It was a notification from the Family Circle group chat. I paused, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. My family never texted this late unless it was an emergency or a demand. Usually it was a demand. I picked up the phone expecting a request for a wire transfer or a complaint about the doorman. Instead, I saw a wall of text from my father, Richard. It was written in the formal, stilted tone he used when he was trying to sound like the CEO he had failed to become. Mercy, it began. We have held a family meeting this evening. After much discussion, we have decided that your negative energy is no longer sustainable for us. It is affecting Chloe's brand and the peace of our home. Effective immediately, we are cutting ties. Do not contact us. Do not come around. We need space to heal. You are on your own now. I stared at the screen, the blue light reflecting in my glasses. Space to heal. From me. The daughter who paid the mortgage. A second later, a notification popped up below his message. My sister Chloe had reacted to the text. It was a single emoji. The party popper. Before we dive into this mess, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the phone against the wall. I didn't type out a frantic paragraph begging them to explain what I had done wrong. I just set the phone down face up next to my mouse. If they wanted a corporate severance, I would give them a corporate severance. I minimized the merger agreement on my left monitor. On my right monitor, I opened a new tab and logged into my personal banking dashboard. The screen loaded, displaying the complex web of auto drafts and recurring transfers that had been the silent architecture of my family's life for the last decade. I looked at the numbers. They weren't just figures. They were the price of my admission into my own family. First, the HOA fees for the penthouse they lived in. $1,800 a month. I clicked the small gear icon next to the transfer. A menu dropped down. I selected Cancel Recurring Payment. A confirmation box popped up asking if I was sure. I clicked yes. Next was the property tax escrow account. $15,000 a year, broken down into monthly bites that I swallowed so my father could maintain the illusion of being a successful real estate investor. I moved the cursor. Click, cancel, confirm. Then the Zelle transfer labeled Chloe's production costs. $600 a month to fund a lifestyle vlogging career that consisted mostly of unboxing videos and complaints about humidity. Click, cancel, confirm. The list of scheduled transfers went from full to empty in under 60 seconds. It was a silent digital guillotine. For years, people had asked me why I did it. Why I paid for a luxury apartment I didn't live in, for a sister who mocked my corporate job, for parents who treated me like a wallet with a pulse. I used to tell myself it was duty. I used to tell myself it was loyalty. But sitting there in the cold light of my office, I finally admitted the truth. It wasn't duty, it was economics. In behavioral psychology, there is a concept called the sunk cost fallacy. It's the tendency to continue investing in a losing proposition, a bad business, a failing project, or a toxic relationship simply because you've already invested so much. You convince yourself that if you just put in a little more money, a little more time, or a little more love, the investment will finally turn a profit. You're terrified to stop because stopping means admitting that everything you've spent up to that point is gone. It means admitting you made a mistake. I hadn't been paying their bills. I had been paying a retainer for a version of my family that didn't exist. I was buying the hope that one day, if I wrote a big enough check, they would look at me the way they looked at Chloe. But that investment had just declared bankruptcy. I looked at the empty transfer list one last time. The buzz of the hard drive seemed to hum a little quieter. I wasn't losing a family tonight. I was just closing a bad account. I closed the browser, picked up my mug of cold coffee, and took a sip. It tasted bitter, but for the first time in years, it didn't taste like guilt. I went back to my merger agreement. I had work to do. And tomorrow, they would find out exactly what on your own really meant. The fallout didn't arrive with a scream or a banging on my door. It arrived the next morning at 6 a.m. with a push notification. I woke up in my office chair, my neck stiff, the merger agreement finally completed on the screen in front of me. My phone was lighting up the dark room like a strobe light. It wasn't a call, it was Instagram. Chloe, Lifestyle just posted a new video, Removing Toxic People Divided by Life update. I rubbed my eyes, took a sip of stale water, and tapped the notification. The video opened. There was Chloe sitting on the white boucle sofa in the penthouse living room, the sofa I bought in the living room I paid the HOA fees for. She was wearing an oversized beige sweater, her knees pulled up to her chest to look small and vulnerable. The lighting was soft, perfectly diffused. She wasn't wearing makeup, which for Chloe meant she was wearing the no makeup look that took 45 minutes to apply. "Hey guys," she whispered to the camera, her voice trembling just enough to register as sad, but not enough to distort the audio. "I wasn't going to film today. I'm heartbroken." She paused. A perfect cinematic beat of silence. "I had to make a really hard decision last night," she continued, wiping away a tear that wasn't there. "I had to cut off a family member. It's so hard when you're the creative one in the family, and the people who are supposed to support you just can't handle your light. There was so much jealousy, so much negative energy coming from my sister. It was affecting my mental health. It was affecting my brand." I watched fascinated. It was a masterclass in fiction. "My parents and I decided we needed space," she said, looking directly into the lens. "We tried to love her, but some people are just bitter. They want you to be a corporate drone like them, and they can't stand to see you free. So we're choosing peace. We're choosing healing." She ended the video with a sad smile and a request for her followers to send good vibes. I scrolled down to the comments. They were already pouring in by the hundreds. "Oh my God, Chloe, I'm so sorry. Jealous sisters are the worst. You don't need that toxicity, babe. Protect your peace. Imagine being jealous of your own sister's success. She sounds miserable. Block her and don't look back. You're glowing without that energy." I read them one by one. Miserable, bitter, toxic. Thousands of strangers judging me based on a performance filmed in a home they didn't know I was paying for. Then a text message banner dropped down from the top of the screen. It was from my mother, Stacy. I expected an apology, maybe a realization that they had gone too far, maybe a panic that the transfers hadn't gone through that morning. Instead, I read, "I hope you're happy. Chloe is devastated by your silence. She's been crying all morning. If you don't send the allowance by noon and reinstate the auto pay for the house, we are going to block you for real. Don't test us, Mercy." I stared at the words. Don't test us. They weren't asking for forgiveness. They weren't even asking for a conversation. They were holding their own affection hostage, demanding a ransom I had been paying for a decade. They truly believed that the privilege of being in their presence was worth $1,800 a month in HOA fees and a $600 allowance. Something inside me, the last lingering thread of guilt, the little girl who just wanted her mother to say good job, finally snapped. It didn't break with a loud noise. It just dissolved. Audacity is a powerful anesthetic. It numbs the pain of loss and replaces it with cold, hard clarity. I looked at the video again. Chloe was monetizing her trauma while sitting in a property she didn't own, attacking the person who kept the lights on. They wanted a villain. They wanted a bitter corporate drone. Fine. I closed Instagram. I opened my email. I didn't reply to my mother. I didn't comment on the video. I didn't try to defend myself against the army of teenagers in the comments section. I had work to do, and if they thought blocking me for real was a threat, they were about to learn the difference between a social media block and a legal eviction. I met Jack for lunch at a bistro 3 blocks from my office. I didn't really want to eat, but I needed to step away from the screens, from the merger agreement, and from the comments section that was currently dissecting my character. Jack was already there, scrolling through his phone with a look of pure thunder on his face. He's an architect, steady, structural, the kind of man who believes in foundations. He looked up as I slid into the booth. "I saw the video," he said, his voice low, "and I saw the text from your mother. Mercy, please tell me we're not sending them a dime." I canceled everything I said, unfolding my napkin. The HOA, the taxes, the allowance, it's all gone. He exhaled a long sound of relief. Good. Because if you hadn't, I was going to go over there myself and change their Wi-Fi password to Get a Jobs. I managed a weak smile. They're threatening to block me for real if I don't pay up by noon. It's already 12:30. Let them, Jack said. Let them sit in the dark. My phone buzzed on the table. We both looked at it, expecting another barrage from my mother or a new manifesto from Chloe. But the name on the screen wasn't Stacy or Richard. It was simply grandmother. Eleanor. My grandmother didn't text. She didn't do group chats. She believed that if something was important enough to say, it was important enough to interrupt your day for. She was the matriarch of the family, a woman who had built a commercial real estate portfolio in the 80s when banks were still asking women for their husbands' permission to open accounts. She was the only person in my family I respected. She was also the only person my father feared. I picked up. "Hello, grandmother." Mercy, her voice was crisp like dry paper. "I've seen your sister's video. It was sent to me by my bridge partner of all people." "Embarrassing." "I know," I said. "I'm sorry you had to see that." "I'm not interested in apologies. I'm interested in solutions. Come to the brownstone, now." The line went dead. I looked at Jack. "I have to go." Eleanor summoned me. "Do you want me to come?" "No," I said, standing up. "If Eleanor is involved, this isn't a lunch conversation, it's a board meeting." 20 minutes later, I was sitting in the high-ceilinged library of my grandmother's Gold Coast brownstone. The room smelled of old paper and expensive beeswax polish. Eleanor sat in her wingback chair, her posture rigid, a cup of tea untouched on the side table. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't offer me a cookie. She pointed a manicured finger at a thick manila folder on the coffee table between us. "Open it," she commanded. I reached forward and flipped the folder open. The first document was a deed. I recognized the address immediately. The Skyline Suite Unit 4201. It was the penthouse my parents lived in, the one my father claimed he had bought with the payout from his tech startup in 2008, a startup that I knew for a fact had imploded before it ever went public. I scanned the lines. Owner of record Eleanor V. Sterling. I looked up confused. "You own the penthouse." "Of course I own it," Eleanor said, her lip curling slightly. "Your father hasn't had 2 nickels to rub together since the 90s. When that business of his failed, they were going to lose their house in the suburbs. I bought the penthouse as an investment property. I told them they could stay there for 6 months. 6 months, Mercy. Until Richard got back on his feet." She leaned forward, her eyes hard. "That was 15 years ago." My mind reeled. For 15 years, my father had paraded around that apartment like a king in his castle. He had hosted dinner parties, looked down on doormen, and lectured me on asset management, all while living in his mother's investment property rent-free. "They don't pay rent?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "They don't pay anything," Eleanor snapped. "I pay the mortgage. You apparently have been paying the taxes and the HOA fees. I saw the bank transfers you authorized. I assumed you knew." "I thought I was helping them keep their asset," I whispered. I thought if I didn't pay, the bank would take it." "There is no bank to take it, Mercy. There is only me. And I am tired." She stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at the street. "I watched that video today," she said softly. "I watched my granddaughter sit in my living room on furniture you likely paid for and call you toxic. I watched your mother threaten you for money she has never earned. I have indulged them because Richard is my son. I thought I was being kind, but I see now that I haven't been kind. I've been an enabler." She turned back to me. Her face was set in stone. "I am 82 years old. I do not have the energy to fight with a 58-year-old toddler who plays pretend with my property. But you," she looked me up and down, her eyes gleaming with a fierce, terrifying pride. "You are a shark, Mercy. I've watched you. You didn't get your father's laziness. You got my teeth." She pointed to the folder again. Under the deed was a second document, a heavy notarized legal instrument. Power of attorney, granting full control over the property located at Unit 4201 to Mercy Sterling. "I'm transferring management of the unit to you effective immediately," Eleanor said. "You want to cut ties? Fine. Make it a clean cut." I stared at the document. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a weapon. It was the nuclear codes. "What do you want me to do?" I asked, my voice steady. Eleanor took a sip of her tea. She didn't smile, but her eyes danced. "They want to be on their own. Give them what they asked for. Evict them." I took the folder back to my office. It was heavy not just with paper, but with the specific gravity of a nuclear option. I sat down and opened a fresh document on my laptop. I didn't need a template. I knew the language of eviction by heart. Notice to quit. Termination of tenancy, at will. Usually in Chicago, you have to give 30 days notice. 30 days for them to pack their fake plants and ring lights. 30 days for my mother to leave weeping voicemails. 30 days for my father to break things on his way out. But I am a lawyer, and lawyers know that every contract has a breach clause. I needed to know exactly who was in that apartment. If they had let a friend move in or a boyfriend, that person could claim squatters' rights. I needed to be sure the unit was occupied only by the 3 people named in my grandmother's affidavit. I logged into the building's resident portal. Since I had been paying the HOA fees for 5 years, my email was the master admin account for the unit's smart home system. I pulled up the access logs for the digital front door lock. I expected to see the usual patterns. Chloe coming in at 2 a.m., my father leaving at 11 a.m. for his coffee meetings. Instead, I saw a highway. Tuesday, 10:00 a.m. guest code shoot 1 generated. Tuesday, 2:00 p.m. guest code brand, deal generated. Wednesday, 9:00 a.m. guest code vlog, team generated. I frowned. The logs went back months. Dozens of unique entry codes, hundreds of unlocking events during working hours. I opened a new tab and typed in a hunch. I searched for Chicago Penthouse Content Studio Rental. The third result was a link to a private booking site called LuxLens. It's a platform where influencers rent high-end spaces by the hour to film their content, creating the illusion of a lifestyle they can't afford. And there it was, the Skyline Studio. The cover photo was my grandmother's living room. The white boucle sofa, the floor-to-ceiling windows, framing the Sears Tower. I clicked on the profile. The host wasn't listed as Richard or Stacy. It was Chloe, MGMT. Exclusive Gold Coast penthouse, the description read. Perfect for get-ready-with-me vlogs, brand activations, and luxury lifestyle shoots. $350 per hour. Minimum 4 hours. NDAs required for all guests. I scrolled through the reviews. Amazing lighting. The host was super chill. Let us move the furniture. Booked for a swimwear shoot. The views are insane. Worth every penny. Chloe is a doll. She even let us use the kitchen props. Kitchen props. My grandmother's antique copper kettles. I pulled up the booking calendar. It was fully booked for the last 3 months. I did the math on the back of a napkin. At an average of 20 hours a week, conservative estimate, they were pulling in $8,000 a month. $8,000. I sat back the air, leaving my lungs in a rush. Last week, my mother had texted me asking for $400 for groceries because they were eating pasta with butter. 2 days ago, Chloe had claimed she couldn't afford her phone bill. They weren't broke. They were running an illegal commercial enterprise out of a residential unit, violating condo bylaws, insurance policies, and tax codes. They were generating nearly 6 figures of untaxed revenue a year, and they were still demanding I pay the $1,800 HOA fee that kept the building security from asking questions. I looked at the photos of strangers posing on the balcony, influencers in rented clothes, holding empty champagne flutes, selling a fantasy of success. And then I looked at Chloe's profile picture. She was smiling, radiant, the queen of a castle she didn't own, built on a foundation she refused to maintain. It was a perfect ecosystem of parasitism. In biology, a parasite doesn't just take, it mimics. It evolves to look like the host, or like something the host wants to nurture, so it can extract resources without triggering an immune response. Chloe and my parents had mastered a modern social version of this. They understood that in the current economy, the appearance of wealth is often more monetizable than the labor required to build it. They were arbitrageurs of reality. They used my labor, the boring, unglamorous 60-hour-week legal work that paid the actual bills to subsidize a stage set. On that stage, they played the roles of the wealthy, carefree creatives. They sold that image to brands, to followers, and to strangers on the internet, cashing in on the aesthetic of a life they hadn't earned. They looked down on me, the corporate drone, the toxic energy, because my existence reminded them of the machinery behind the curtain. I was the ugly reality that made their beautiful lie possible. They didn't just need my money. They needed my silence. They needed me to be the worker bee so they could be the queens. But parasites have a fatal weakness. They cannot survive without the host. I printed the LuxLens listing. I printed the booking calendar. I printed the smart lock access logs. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. This was illegal subletting. It was commercial use of a private residence. It was grounds for immediate for-cause eviction. I didn't need to give them 30 days. I didn't need to give them 30 minutes. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for a private process server I used for hostile witnesses. "Jim," I said when he answered. "I have a rush job. Do you work on live stream?" The notification came through at 2:15 p.m. It was a link from Jim, the process server. He had timed it perfectly. Chloe was live on TikTok doing a GRWM for a mental health day stream. She was applying toner, talking about how the universe tests the strongest warriors. Then the doorbell rang in the background. She frowned, checked the camera, and went to answer it, leaving the stream running. Thousands of people heard Jim's voice. Chloe Sterling, Richard Sterling, you've been served. Notice of immediate termination of tenancy for cause. Illegal commercial use of a residential unit. Chloe gasped. The stream cut to black. 30 minutes later, the security desk in my office building called. Miss Sterling, the guard said, his voice tight. Your family is here. They're demanding to see you. The father is shouting about loyalty. Let them in, I said, but keep them in the main lobby and have the team stand by. I took the elevator down. The lobby of my firm is a cavern of marble and glass designed to intimidate opposing counsel. When the doors opened, I saw them. My father was pacing his face a mottled red. My mother was weeping into a handkerchief looking around for an audience. And Chloe was holding her phone up recording. Of course she was. She was trying to control the narrative. She was trying to film the cruel sister for part 2 of her victim saga. I walked toward them, my heels clicking on the stone floor like a gavel striking a desk. 2 security guards flanked me. I held a thick binder in my hand. Mercy, my father roared when he saw me. His voice echoed off the high ceilings. Have you lost your mind? You send a stranger to our home to serve us papers. It's not your home, I said, my voice calm, projected just enough to carry. And he wasn't a stranger, he was a court officer. We are your family, he screamed, stepping forward. The guard stepped with him, blocking his path. He recoiled. You evict your own parents for what? Because we asked for a little help? Because you're jealous of your sister? Chloe thrust her phone closer to my face. Say hi to the vlog, Mercy. Tell everyone why you're making Mom and Dad homeless. I looked at the camera lens. I didn't bat an eye. I'm not making them homeless, I said. I'm shutting down a business. I turned to the large digital display on the lobby wall, usually reserved for firm announcements. I pulled a remote from my pocket. I'd asked IT to set this up 10 minutes ago and clicked a button. The screen flickered to life. It wasn't a welcome message. It was a spreadsheet. What is that? My mother whispered. That, I said, pointing to the screen, is the booking calendar for the Skyline Studio. The illegal rental business you've been running out of grandmother's apartment for the last 3 years. The color drained from Chloe's face. She lowered the phone. I pulled the logs. I continued, my voice crisp. You've had over 400 commercial bookings, music videos, brand shoots, influencer parties. You charge $350 an hour. I clicked the remote again. A graph appeared. Conservatively, you've generated $96,000 in revenue this year alone, untaxed, unreported, and definitely not shared with the owner of the property. I turned back to my father. He looked like he was trying to swallow a golf ball. You told me you were eating pasta with butter, I said. You told me you couldn't afford your phone bill. You demanded I pay the HOA fees because you were destitute. But you weren't broke, Richard. You were hoarding. It was just a side hustle, Chloe stammered, her voice thin. To help out. A side hustle is selling bracelets on Etsy, I said. This is fraud. It's a violation of the condo bylaws. It's a violation of the insurance policy. And since you didn't declare this income to the IRS and I checked because I handle your tax filings, it's tax evasion. The word hung in the air. Evasion. Grandmother knows, I said. She saw the numbers. She saw the strangers in her home. And she saw the text where you threatened to block me if I didn't give you more money. I walked forward and held out the binder. My father didn't take it, so I dropped it on the bench beside him. It landed with a heavy thud. In that binder is a cease and desist order from the condo board, a bill for back taxes I am no longer paying, and a restraining order barring all 3 of you from entering the property or contacting Eleanor Sterling. My mother let out a sob, but it sounded different this time. It wasn't performative. It was the sound of reality crashing through the roof. Mercy, please, she begged, reaching out a hand. We can fix this. We'll cut you in. We'll pay rent. It's too late for rent, I said. The locks were changed 10 minutes ago. Your personal items, the ones you actually own, have been moved to a storage unit in Joliet. You have the key in that binder. Joliet, Chloe shrieked. That's an hour away. Then you better get driving, I said. You're on your own now. I turned my back on them. Behind me, I heard my father start to shout again, but it was weak, a bluster with no wind behind it. The security guard stepped in. I walked to the elevator and pressed the button. As the doors closed, I saw them standing in the lobby, exposed, bankrupt, and finally truly seen. The aftermath wasn't an explosion. It was a liquidation. The penthouse sold in 3 weeks. It went to a tech CEO who didn't care about the view or the lighting. He just wanted a tax haven. My grandmother Eleanor took the proceeds and moved into a serviced apartment in the Gold Coast, one with a doorman who knew her name and a bridge club that met on Tuesdays. She told me she had never slept better. The weight of carrying a dead investment was gone, replaced by the lightness of a portfolio that finally balanced. As for the Skyline studio, it ceased to exist. Without the backdrop of the floor-to-ceiling windows and the white boucle sofa, Chloe's brand suffered a rapid terminal decline. She tried to pivot to a digital nomad era, filming content from the cramped living room of the two-bedroom rental my parents were forced to lease in a suburb an hour away. But the lighting was bad, the acoustics were hollow, and her engagement plummeted. It turns out people weren't watching for her personality. They were watching for the real estate. My parents, Richard and Stacy, faced a reality they had spent a lifetime avoiding. They were forced to get jobs, not consulting gigs or projects, but jobs. My mother works at a high-end department store selling perfume to the kind of women she used to pretend to be. My father works at a car dealership, not in management, but in sales, trying to convince strangers to buy things they can't afford, a skill he has practiced on himself for decades. I hear rumors through distant relatives that they complain about me constantly. They tell anyone who will listen that I am ungrateful, cold, a corporate shark who stole their home and threw them to the wolves. I don't correct them. I don't send emails with receipts attached. I don't defend my character. 6 months later, I stood on the balcony of my own apartment. It isn't a penthouse. It's a sensible two-bedroom in a quiet building with good bones. But the deed is in my name. The furniture was bought with cash, and the silence is paid for in full. Jack stepped out onto the balcony, handing me a glass of wine. We didn't need to talk. The air was cool, smelling of rain, and exhaust the smell of the city, honest and unpretentious. My phone buzzed on the railing. For the first time in half a year, my pulse didn't spike. I didn't feel that familiar clench of dread in my stomach. I just glanced at the screen. It was a notification from my credit monitoring service. Alert, credit application denied. Applicant Stacy Sterling, guarantor Mercy Sterling. They had tried to use my name. Again. Probably for a lease on a car or maybe a better apartment, trying to claw back a fraction of the status they had lost. They had filled out the form, typed in my social security number, and hit submit, hoping that maybe, just maybe, I had forgotten to freeze my credit. Hoping that the old Mercy, the doormat, the enabler, had left a window open. But the window was closed. The door was locked. The system had auto-rejected them in milliseconds. I stared at the notification and I felt a profound settling peace. In every story my family tells for the rest of their lives, I will be the villain. I will be the cruel daughter who evicted her elderly parents. I will be the jealous sister who destroyed a budding creative career. I will be the monster who chose money over blood. And I accept that. There is a specific kind of peace that comes from accepting the role of the villain in someone else's narrative. We are taught that we must always be the good person, the one who forgives, the one who turns the other cheek, the one who keeps the peace at the expense of their own sanity. We are taught that being good means being accessible. But that is a lie designed to keep victims in their place. If being the hero means letting them drain my accounts and insult my existence, then I don't want the cape. If being the villain means I wake up every morning with a positive net worth and a quiet home, then I will wear the black hat. I will be the bad guy in their story so I can finally be the protagonist in mine. I tapped the notification. I didn't call them to scream. I didn't text them to gloat. I simply swiped left. Archive. The screen went dark. I looked out at the skyline, at the millions of lights flickering in the distance. Somewhere out there, my family was likely sitting in a dim room, blaming me for their darkness. But here on my balcony, the lights were on. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't paying for anyone else's electricity. If you've ever had to be the villain in someone else's story just to save your own sanity, share this video. Let's remind each other that peace is worth the price.